The Clanky Lincoln's my one of my projects, the electric band, cover band project. We haven't seen each other since our last gig, which was February. And you run into each other in town, had a beer once, but for the most part, we just known that we were waiting. And we, back in October, we got a date at Odin Brewing, place in town here that has its outdoor stage, beer garden thing, pretty well set up for social distancing and whatnot, on December 6th. And so we had time. It was, not quite Halloween yet, and this was a December date. And we talked about how we were going to prepare and do, and, we were real clear we did not want to go on stage and fake it. But that it's been, at that point, 7 months, coming up on 8 months, and we needed to get back together. And how we were going to do that was outdoors, specifically in my backyard. We scheduled some times to do that. It rained us out a couple of times. We got together once, and it was great. Oh, God, it was so great. And it was really rough. I would not have wanted to go on stage the way we were.
What specifically was rough about it?
Remembering song forms, remembering parts, remembering recent-ish changes to how we were doing songs had fallen out of our brain. Vocal parts that we'd recently organized. The ones from way back that we've been playing for a couple of years, those are in our muscle memories, not a problem. But things that we added to the show in the couple of months before the shutdown were long gone from our brains. And all the transitions that between songs that we used to be just like laser crystal tight on, now flabby and messy and couldn't get through them clean. It wasn't, it was the kind of thing, if you'd played it live, people would have had fun. People who've seen us before would know it was not our best night. People who hadn't would just kind of think we were okay, but it just wasn't, it's not the show we wanted to put out.
Sure.
And then we looked forward on the calendar and realized we had one more opportunity to get together, maybe two. And on one of them, we couldn't all be there. It was just going to be bass, drums, and me. Other frontman wasn't able to make it. And then it looked like rain on the date after that when we could get together before the show. So we ended up with essentially no opportunities to be all together again before this show. And there was a call to make. There was a call to make at that point about what we were going to do about that. I mean, were we going to go on stage and kind of bluff our way through and say, hey, folks, it's been 9 months, we're having fun and hope you are. I mean, there's a way to do that that's not awful, but it's not how we want to be. We don't want to be remembered for, stumping our way through something. And ultimately it was Tony, our drummer, who said, we just, it's not us. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do this. And I like to think I might have gotten there on my own too, but I might not have. I might have tried to bluster through. But for sure, with one of my guys saying we shouldn't do this, I'm going to drag him to the stage. Like that's, the call's been made. And it was the right call. I am aligned on the call. I'm not, I have no regret about that call being the one that got made. But it makes me think about times when, as a business, as a enterprise, you've got to make tough calls like that. In this case, everything about us wants to play. We just want to frickin' play, and even if it's not fantastic, it was so great to get together that one time we managed it in the backyard. It was so good to see the guys and, get some sound happening. And so that might have been real seductive. That might have been attractive enough that we would have, been willing
roll
to
the dice on it.
Yeah. See how it goes and, have some of it probably not go great and like kind of laugh our way through it. But ultimately, I ended up calling the manager there and saying, there's just, at this point, there's no way we're going to be able to put on the kind of show we want to put on. And he was completely cool about it, totally got it. I think a business person in this climate is very, very used to things changing totally last minute. And we subbed in my acoustic duo, which essentially doesn't need to practice at this point. We've played some recently enough that it's pretty much plug and play at this point for that set. So what we decided to do, because it literally has been months since we've been together or talked or hung out, and that's a part, we're missing the hang as much as we're missing the music. Miss the guys. Sure. So we have scheduled a weekly Zoom hangout that we may not make every week, but better to have it on the calendar and skip it sometimes than let months go by. And we're going to have conversations now about what we want to come back to the stage with, what we want to leave behind in this time. If we sort of tell the truth, if I tell the truth about the last few months before the lockdown, we were playing the same show, plus or minus 10%, probably for the last 3 months. And some of it was pretty tired.
Sure.
Some of it was, I wasn't loving all of it anymore. And, we ended up playing to the same sort of big-ish and increasingly big handful of regulars who came every time, plus whoever else was in the bar. And those regulars, love what we do, but mixing it up on them is also great. Probably worth doing. As long as we sort of do honor to what makes us, right? There's a rap battle thing that's been part of our show forever that if we got rid of, just, I don't know who we'd be anymore. But it had gotten kind of flabby. It had gotten a little, repetitive and long, and we, planning to cut it way down. So those are the conversations we're going to be having, weekly now, or more or less weekly. So it's really a positive outcome, even though we didn't end up getting to do the thing we really wanted to do. So,
yeah.
But it made me think about, the hard call, making the hard call in your band and in your business. I can think of a couple others that like really took a gut check to do. What's there for you when I say hard call? What have you had in your past?
Been thinking about that, going back to the show that we played, I can't imagine what it would have felt like to have the realization that you guys had, but having it in the middle of a show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That we weren't ready.
Right.
I think that strategically and just kind of operationally, our bands function differently.
Yes.
So our show is basically on wheels because we play to tracks 99% of the time.
Right.
So, everybody's got cues, everybody's got clicks. It's the same kind of thing, and maybe songs are in different orders. But like, because we hadn't done it in so long, we weren't looking to reinvent the wheel. They're like, here's this set that we know that we can just crush.
Yep.
And it's a 2-hour set. We're just going to do it top to bottom and just like, hit it.
Sure.
And, for us, we were fortunate. The guys were prepared. There was enough of it that was like programmed in that like the show went great.
Yeah.
We have never been in a situation where we have had to cancel a show, but the show that we had done had been pushed back 3 times. And the third time that it was pushed, it was our decision to push it because of the situation and people that were getting sick and hospitalizations and that kind of thing. We went to them like the day before, the day of, that was like, look, we just don't think this is the right move. And they were kind of in agreement. It wasn't like there wasn't any sort of like push and pull on that situation. Yeah. This doesn't feel right. And so they were like, let's go ahead and, let's have this conversation.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like most of the time when I'm having tough conversations or making tough calls, it's like dealing with people and not necessarily like business decisions,
right.
Like having a conversation with somebody who, maybe had too much fun on a gig or didn't kind of live up to their end of the bargain.
Yes.
Had to have those conversations before. And I've had to pull people off of gigs because of rehearsal, like showing up to rehearsal and not being prepared and like being like, hey, you're out for this thing. I don't feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah. And you just lay it out that flat. Here's a situation. I'm not comfortable.
In both cases, you are looking at this and you know what you expect and you know what your audience expects. And you need to kind of make sure that those two things are in alignment. And if they're not, then, you have to make those kinds of calls.
Yeah.
Having this conversation a year before or a year from now, maybe a totally different thing, because like doing that kind of thing when things are popping off and competition is high and, the business is moving, could probably be a detriment to your reputation or that kind of thing. But like,
could be.
This is definitely like, the exception to the rule. Nothing that we have talked about this year has really been,
That's right.
That's right. Standard operating procedure. So
yeah, we parted ways with a player early on in the Clanky Lincolns after a couple gigs who just wasn't performing at the caliber we needed. And I didn't really dig into why that was. It was kind of irrelevant. But yeah, it was tough because of some relationships that existed among people in the band long prior to us forming.
Sure.
But getting everyone who needed to be part of delivering that message on the same page was part of it. And then having that conversation on a phone call with everybody and having it like be really clear that like this one player just, it wasn't going to work. And it's different, I think, with a band like mine, because we're essentially a democracy. I mean, I handle a lot of the business, but in terms of the performance and the content and everything like that, and the messaging, to material that we put out, we're essentially a democracy. So that took a band conversation. It took a group conversation to have that talk with that guys. But to get there was it was a gut check. It was tough, particularly for Justin, my co-frontman, who was friends with him, brought him into the band, for him to sort of let that friendship not be part of the conversation and just have the business talk. It's tough, but we got through it.
And I think that, when you're dealing with creative projects, it can be kind of tricky. I feel like cover bands, it's a little bit easier because you can say, hey, this is a money-making venture, and these are the tent poles that we're kind of like operating under. I have been through personnel changes with like original bands, and they're messy and they're dramatic.
Yeah.
You don't see that quite as much now. I've seen plenty of local cover bands like spill tea on social media, which is just tacky.
Don't do that.
And unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's never easy, and it is one of those things that you kind of, it kind of pushes you to be a leader of some kind. And it's, we talk about being band leaders, but like being the person in charge means that sometimes you have to make the hard decisions and do the hard things.
Yep.
I'm not quite a complete dictator. I will say that I have been an asshole in certain circumstances. Have you heard that term before?
I have.
So for those of you who don't know what that means, is that that's when you ask somebody for their advice and they give you that advice, and then you ignore that advice and do what you were going to do anyway. Right. I do try to, when there are conflicts or weirdness, I do try to hear people out. And sometimes I can see things from their perspective and, make adjustments and say, hey, maybe this was just a miscommunication and we're good. But there's been other times where I'm like, hey, this happened and it's not cool that it happened and it can't happen again. Or you're not going to be able to participate in this any longer. So.